Hi, welcome to the Divine Insight Show. Thank you so much for joining us wherever and whenever you're doing so. Today, I'm joined by Ora Nadrich. Ora is a pioneering mindfulness expert, international keynote speaker and coach, and the founder and president of the Institute for Transformational Thinking. She's here with me today to talk about her most recent book, Mindfulness and Mysticism, Connecting Present Moment Awareness with Higher States of Consciousness. Ora, it's a pleasure and honor for me to talk with you again. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Travis. It's so nice to connect with you again.
Thank you. So we've talked before about mindfulness in a couple of times regarding your previous book, Says Who and Live True. Let's for a moment pretend we haven't spoken before, or perhaps for new audience members, how did you come to understand mindfulness in your life?
You know, I've been asked that question many times, and every time it is asked of me, I immediately go back to childhood, which is something I wouldn't have thought that would be, the origin of my answer. But it does bring me back to childhood because I remember as a little girl, I would love to do things like climb trees and lay in an open field and just look up at the sky and watch the clouds moving across the sky. And it's so vivid for me just to even think about that right now, that was really my happy place. So what that tells me is that I was very present as a child, and I wanted to be very present. I wanted to really be in those moments and really just allow myself to what a word that I use in mindfulness mysticism, to free fall into those moments, meaning just, allow yourself to be taken into the vastness of a moment and being so present that you just allow yourself to that, to go into that experience. So that to me tells me that that's a lot of the essence of who I am anyway, because of how much I loved that as a child. And so fast forward, when I got into the contemplative practices and I went on a deep psychospiritual journey, I really went into so many incredible places of learning about spirit and about the essence, the true essence of our heart and soul, who we are in this lifetime, and so many things that I experienced on the evolution of my psychospiritual journey. And as a meditator, I was a transcendental meditator for many, many years. And then I read all these fantastic books on Taoism and Buddhism, and all of that just resonated for me immediately. And again, the focus being very much about being in the present. So when I came upon mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness, which is really an ancient old practice that goes way back to a lot of the contemplative practices and different religions that really talked about what it means to be in the state of oneness, I resonated to it immediately. I became certified as a mindfulness practitioner and as a mindfulness meditation teacher. And it's been my teachings, really. It's really what my books are about. It's what my workshops are about, is the teaching of the mindfulness practice. But as I said, it goes way back. So I think it's when our soul essence, our true essence, really meets our purpose. Do you know? Where there's a union that happens between our true authentic self, which I also write about, as you know, and Live True. It's about mindfulness and the authentic self. And it's really coupling the true authentic self to present moment awareness. So when you can really show up in a moment authentic to who you are, I feel that experience can be really mystical, actually. Do you know? So that's what brought me to this new place of exploring mindfulness even deeper.
I really appreciate that, and certainly can relate to much of what you're describing about having some symbiosis with respect to your nature and having that experience and lived trueness to yourself be your destiny. And I think many people who might be interested in the subject of understanding mindfulness are, and it's ever increasing of a problem in society, that people are ever increasing in their busyness and minds racing even more. Technology advances, notification this, meme that, and developing the understanding of and capacity for present moment awareness, which is already challenging, is even more difficult and important, is it not?
Absolutely, and I talk about that because we are only getting more busy, meaning that's the way the world's movement, the current, is pulling us into ever increasing states of busyness. Do you know?
Mhm.
So that's why a mindfulness practice is needed now more than ever. Do you know? It's like feeling this current, like when you get pulled into in an undertow in the ocean. It's like it's constantly pulling us into mass consciousness of busyness. And if we are not mindful, meaning if we're not aware of that, we're going to really fall into the trap of getting used to being busy all the time. And that becomes the new normal, do you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
And I'm concerned about that, especially in the times that we're in right now, that there's this exponential increase in constant distraction and overstimulation and bombardment of external stimuli. And it really can pull you away from your true nature. It can pull you away from just being in a state of beingness, which I describe in Mindfulness and Mysticism as a pure mind state. We're
Mhm.
just in complete acceptance of the moment that we're in, and we don't feel we have to do anything or be anything other than, again, the authentic self. But if there's constant stimulation and constant distraction, and it pulls us into that current, if you will, it's going to take us away from our beingness, and it's going to constantly put us in a state of doing. And before you know it, you're not going to feel comfortable in a state of being. And that's why meditation is appealing to a lot of people, because you can shut out the doing state of consciousness and be in the being state of consciousness. So you're suddenly like allowing yourself to just be. Like, okay, I'm going to be here in this meditation for however long you're in a meditation, and just allow myself to be. And we know that the mind needs a while to sort of decompress. The mind needs time, and it's a great way to observe the busyness of the mind in a meditation. Because if you're constantly doing and you're constantly on that hamster wheel all the time,
Mhm.
then suddenly you're like, okay, I need some help. I'm gonna go into meditation so I could quiet the mind. Think about that. We need to invite ourselves into that state because we're constantly busy.
Yeah, it's actually unhealthy for people and creates ADD. And I think our attention span, last I checked, actually got worse than a goldfish. It's under 8 seconds, I think, last I checked. This was a couple of years ago. And we used to have the ability to maintain concentration for 20 seconds. That's a lot nowadays. But to your point, ever more important that it becomes a state of allowing.
Exactly, Travis. We are definitely in a major spiritual shift on the planet right now. I know you understand that. And
Yeah.
we can really observe this energy. And for anybody who's tapped into energy, which I know you are and I am, we can feel it. It's palpable, that there's this energy that's very frenetic, and it's an
Mm.
energy that is really heightening um, the energy, the frequency on the planet, which means we have to heighten our frequency.
Yeah.
Not to match that kinetic energy, but we to neutralize that energy. We have to really use our own energy, our natural born
Mm.
energy, and I want to say almost combat this frenetic frequency that's constantly bombarding us all day, all night. There's all this stuff coming at us constantly. Imagine this energy coming at you, and it feels chaotic. It feels
Mm.
disruptive. It feels chaotic. You use ADD, and it's like the attention span. Well, if we're on our devices as much as we are, and we're on devices that, now think about it, it's like you're on Instagram and you've got 57 seconds of a post. Well, now you're on TikTok, and now you're on a reel. It keeps getting smaller and smaller, shorter and shorter awareness levels of time. It's like, oh, now it's less than 57 seconds. Now it's 10 seconds. And then it's going to be 2 seconds,
Yeah,
It's pretty crazy.
it is. Shifting gears into mysticism for a moment. Well, that's part of what we're talking about today. What's a good place to start? There are a lot of beliefs, customs, understandings, and definitions about what mysticism means, and practices that include religion but don't have to. Where's a good place to start with mysticism?
Really good point that you're saying that. For anybody who reads the book, you can see that I repeat in the book, this is not meant to be a religious book, because although one can have a mystical experience or connect to mystical energies or frequencies, or what I call the invisible presence, if you will, what someone might experience it in a God-like entity form, or oneness, or source, or unity consciousness, or Christ consciousness. You can call it whatever you want. I don't want to bog it down with names or labels. But when you ask a good place to start, a really good place to start, I feel, and it's really what I invite the reader into on the journey of the mystical journey, is to do a lot of the exercises that I have, but to ask yourself if you want to enter into the mystical experience, if you are ready to receive the mystical experience. And that's really the thrust of the book, because I'm suggesting that each and every one of us can have mystical experiences, and probably have had mystical experiences, maybe didn't even call them that. And that's also what I'm wanting someone is to hearken back to, remember experiences in your life that felt either very spiritual or very otherworldly, or very divine or holy or sacred. And you maybe didn't say to yourself at the time, wow, I just had a mystical experience. So a good way to start is to first go back to remembering, about maybe moments in your life that felt very special to you, and could maybe fall into the context, if you will, of the mystical, and learn how to bring yourself back there again. Again, to your point about the busyness and distraction is almost the enemy of the mystical experience, because it doesn't give you time to drop into that altered state of consciousness. And that's what I'm really also suggesting, is that we want to be very careful that we don't give ourselves over to that frenetic energy, because it will take you away from experiencing the mysteries and the magic and the mystical, if you will. So one of the things I would suggest is to allow yourself time to go into the deepness within, so that you can do a lot of the exercises that I have in the book. I have a lot of exercises, I have meditations, I have initiations, I have rituals, I have questions to ask yourself, so that you are ready to receive. The term Kabbalah, for anybody that's into Jewish mysticism, or the book of Kabbalah, which doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be Jewish to experience it, but Kabbalah means to receive. It means that you are opening yourself up to receive the information, to receive the messages, to receive the guidance, to be able to consider yourself a vessel that is receptive, that can receive. And being aware, which mindfulness is that practice of awareness, of being in the present moment with that awareness, and be able to tell yourself, to prime yourself, to prepare yourself, like, yes, I'm ready to receive. And for many people, including myself, even with writing Mindfulness Mysticism, I do feel that I was in a receptive state to write that book. I was open. Therefore, I was able to receive the information and the knowledge and the wisdom to gather the sacred truths, which is what the book is basically dedicated to, those who seek sacred truths. If you're somebody who really is set on that journey to know the sacred truths of the universe, you're already saying, I'm ready to receive this knowledge. Do you know?
Mhm. It reminds me of a quote that is from someone: once you heard the term enlightenment, you'll be satisfied with nothing less.
It's beautiful.
I don't remember who. I just
Beautiful.
was also reminded about this concept of taking, and this idea that in order to have a external mystical experience, I have to rely on some external experience, reliance on external circumstance like substances, experiences, escaping outside of oneself to achieve that, or a heightened state of awareness rather than internal. Why is that, in your opinion, the case?
Such a good question, Travis, and really on the pulse of my book, because if you read the introduction, I really go into that immediately. And that what I was most curious about was the chemicals of our own brain, the own makings of our own chemicals. And I think to myself, it's interesting how so many people really want the high. If you think about
Mhm.
getting high, well, what does high really mean? Getting high, I look at high as elevating your consciousness, therefore elevating your frequency, elevating your energy. So I'm doing this with my hand, I'm motioning upward, into the etheric realms where we can again receive the beautiful, exquisite messages from on high, from the realms that are not just of the dense material matter, but more of a spiritual nature. And I was very curious when I was exploring that, because I thought, well, mysticism really, for many, is thought of in as religious context, and or relying on substances to give us the high, to give us the euphoria and the bliss and the ecstasy. We think we have to do that with drugs and stimulants and alcohol and whatever can in fact be the gateway. A lot of people feel that's the gateway to experience those incredible high feelings. And I'm thinking to myself, well, we probably in the future at one time, as we evolve so exponentially into the future, that we're going to be able to just go into these unbelievable places in our psyches, in our consciousness, that will mimic what it feels like to be very high on drugs that give you that feeling of, bliss and euphoria and ecstasy. And I think the reason why a lot of people reach for drugs is for that reason. They want to be taken out of their difficulty. They want to be taken out of their pain. They want to be taken out of their misery, or they want to be numb. And I think to myself, what is everybody numbing themselves from? I mean, we know life can be very, very difficult and can be very, very painful. Buddha said that life is suffering, but it's like, what do we want to do about that? Just give into the suffering and live a life of constant suffering. So I'm really taking a sneak peek into the future mind. I like to go into those places of what does the future mind look like? The future meaning now is the future. We're in the future. The
Right.
future is present. It's not something, yes, as we evolve more rapidly, we're going to be able to access parts of our brains we know we're not using, we're probably using just a very, very small percentage of our brain's capacity. So I thought we have our brain chemistry, as I say in Mindfulness Mysticism, mimics a medicine chest. You've got the endorphins, the opioids, the oxytocin, which to me mimics the drug OxyContin, which is such a lethal drug and so dangerous. And, buyer beware, because these drugs can be extremely dangerous and can kill you. So you're going to do that to get the high? No. The mystical experience can give you highs that you never thought were imaginable, And that's what I want us to suddenly ride that wave. Let's go deeper into our psyches. Let's go deeper into our imaginations. Let's go deeper into our creativity. And let's go deeper into our brain capacity. I want to take this. I'm inviting all of us to take this journey to get come on, let's get on board and take this.
Get with me, get with the program. Alcohol is still technically a poison. It is a poison. It deadens the nerves.
And why do they call it spirits?
I joked with several colleagues over the years when I was drinking a little bit at the time before I got sober. And the collective of us would get together, sometimes have a glass of wine, and we were all mediums. And when you get several mediums within the same vortex of physical space, the energy is amplified, and then it's more easy to connect to the other side. And then with a glass of wine, it's like the spirits are spirits.
Exactly. It's like a party of the spirits, right?
Exactly. Communing with the spirits.
Yeah.
What is it that seems to compel us in our drive or search for something more?
We do. We desire more, but I would ask, what is the more that we desire? I think there's something for everybody is different. Some people desire more materialism and they can never get enough. It's like more money, more things, more cars, more houses, whatever. And then there are people that want more of the spiritual awakening, and I think we have to look at our appetite for what is it that we're really longing for. I feel that we're longing to become whole, meaning mind, body, and spirit. We're longing on this life journey. We know we're here for a reason, for those that really believe that. It's like, what are we doing here? And knowing that we're here, it's like, don't you want to know? Don't you want to find out? Don't you want to go deeper? Don't you want to go higher? And I, again, say higher, not in an artificial substance abuse way, but take your consciousness higher and really keep evolving so that you can have these incredible experiences on the life journey. So it's a good thing to ask oneself, what is it that I desire? What is it that I long for? Again, going back to Buddhism, which really looks at what is desire. If we're constantly in this insatiable appetite of wanting more, we're never going to be satisfied. We're always going to be like wanting more and needing more and hungry. It's like this hungry phantom that always
hungry ghost.
Hungry ghost.
A lot of people consider addiction to be.
Exactly.
It's been characterized as a hungry ghost.
Absolutely.
Where's that ghost?
Exactly. And you're so right. And I really, really have to tell you, my chapter on mindfulness and addiction, mysticism, the chapter that I have on, the addiction portion was really one of the most powerful chapters for me in that book, because I really understand why someone wants to go into the depths, into, just again, free fall into that bliss and euphoria. But that hungry ghost, if you do it that way, if you take that trip, as opposed to the mystical trip that I'm suggesting that we take, which isn't going to be our undoing, the hungry ghost wants to feed off of you, basically, and the addict, if they're not careful, can succumb to that and be consumed, as and that's the whole notion of addiction. So I say, let's explore a different high.
I love that. And the awareness that one has to have for where their addiction might be inhibiting them, whether that's alcohol, drugs, prescription, or otherwise, or negative pattern thinking. I could have an addiction to negative payoff states of creating an environment that is harmful for me, and then suddenly playing a victim and then blaming myself. So negative self-harm.
Absolutely. Just sort of being drawn to destructiveness, what is that desire to destroy, to destroy oneself. And it's powerful, which is connected to a lot of the programming and a lot of the wounding and a lot of the trauma of just recreating these old feeling states that might be in direct opposition to what I said earlier about our true authentic self. We come in as these pure spirits, I believe. And then with the life journey, there's a lot that happens that can be very painful, produce a lot of suffering, trauma, things that really chip away at the spirit. And so one can easily become almost so familiar with it that they keep recreating it. Do you know?
They get so used to it that they're uncomfortable without it.
Exactly. And can't imagine a life without suffering. So, be aware of who and what is your master.
Yeah. So what's divine illumination, shifting gears a little bit, and how can mindfulness be an opportunity for people to experience it in their lives if that's what's desired?
Well, I look at divine illumination as, again, that we have the ability to hold illumined thoughts in our mind, and that those thoughts can be connecting us to the divine. And again, whatever that means to each of us is very unique to us. And because we think so many thousands of thoughts a day, we often are at the effect of less illumined thoughts. Again, going back to the voices, the inner voices of the critic, the inner voices of sabotage, the inner voices of unworthiness. There's a lot of that inner dialogue that takes place, and it's not thoughts of the illumined mind, which I think it's programming. It becomes a programmed mind based on life's experiences. So the thoughts become self-fulfilling. And what I propose in the illumined mind or divine illumination is to start to cultivate thoughts that are connecting you to the divine essence of your existence and what that means to you. Be able to discern between thoughts that really aren't of the divine or feeling sacred and holy to your spirit and to your soul. And listen, a lot of our thoughts are very counterproductive. A lot of our thoughts are very counterintuitive, and they do nothing for us. They're taking up what I call precious real estate. The mind
That's a good imagery.
The mind is the most valuable real estate we have. Imagine what we can basically harbor in this vastness of the human mind. So do you want your thoughts to be filled with just useless thoughts that do nothing for you, that do nothing to support you or to help others or to transform your consciousness in higher capacities, that it is capable of? Or do you want to cultivate thoughts that are of the light and that are thoughts that really enable you to tap into deeper dimensions of your being and to be able to tap into different dimensions of consciousness? That you can go into this never ending, vastness of the consciousness that is all, and you talked about enlightenment. I think we have little mini enlightenments along the way, maybe
little God shots.
Yeah, God shots. And maybe when we leave the body, when our spirit is done in this vessel, the vehicle of the body, it goes, aha, in that moment, enlightenment is obtained, So I really, again, offer up to the reader that we have the opportunity to cultivate an illumined mind. And by cultivating an illumined mind and thoughts that are of the light, if you will, we can experience heightened states of awareness. And by experiencing heightened states of awareness, we start to raise our consciousness. By raising our consciousness, we're on that frequency that, again, opens us up to receive. experiences that are of more of a divine nature, if you will.
Yeah, and just to reiterate something that you have also said, and we've said this earlier in the show, which is so, so, so important. And you make a distinction between a person's own individual religious belief and practices and mystical experiences. Regardless of one's religious beliefs or lack thereof, one can achieve a mystical experience through mindfulness. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, because when we're in the present moment, we're dropping in. Again, we're free falling into the moment of now. And there's no more powerful moment than the moment that we're in right now because we're most alive in it, and we have this understanding that it's timeless. And I talk about that as well, is that there's like time continuum. There's really no past, present, and future. It's all kind of together. And we get these wonderful experiences, these, what I call this aroma, this sense, if you will, that there is something greater than just this dense reality of illusion that we sometimes believe is the only thing that really defines us, and it doesn't. So the practice of mindfulness really is a daily awareness of how present am I? How present am I in this moment? And you go deeper and deeper into present moment awareness when you become very active in present moment awareness consciousness. And the more you cultivate this practice, the more you again are opening yourself up to the divine experiences. The more you are opening yourself up to knowing what I said earlier about delving deeper into sacred truths, the sacred truths of the universe. Do you know? So mindfulness is a great tool. Mindfulness actually is a quality. It's an inherent quality that we all have. I call it like it's like a superpower. It's metacognition. It's like super awareness. And the more you develop it, the more aware you get. And it's like widening this lens where, you could look through a lens. If I wanted to look at a portion of something or just, a snapshot of something, I might just see what I'm, adjusting that lens to be. But when you start to widen the playing field and you start to become more aware and develop and strengthen present moment awareness, well, your senses become much more heightened. And you start to experience things in a much deeper, richer way.
Yeah, you're reminding me that I learned the third eye is a muscle. It doesn't get stronger just sitting there. It can get stronger over time through practice, awareness, and use.
Definitely. Yeah, it is. It's like the all-knowing, the seer, it's like the pineal gland, there are many different thoughts about it being the eye of seeing. It's the wisdom eye. It's the eye that really sees through, the breaks through, or what I call in the book, lifting the veils of illusion. It's like we constantly have to lift these veils of illusion that are not real, that have us seeing things only on the surface. But we've got to look beyond the surface. And the third eye is able to penetrate that. There's an inner knowing, there's an inner seeing that we are capable of, that's just beyond just the two eyes that we think is seeing everything. We can see beyond just the surface. And that's another thing that I really invite the reader to do, is to go beyond what's on the surface. I love that quote by Thoreau. It's not what you're looking at that matters, it's what you see.
I love that too. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So what are the veils and why do you say they should be lifted?
Well, I think that the veils, what I call the veils of deception, I think that the way in which a lot of what is presented to us as real is not. All we have to do is look at the game of life and the way it's constructed. And for anybody who sees beyond the illusion of things, they know it's not real. So we live in a very illusion-based reality. We're fed a lot of things, we're programmed, we're brainwashed, we're told things are something that we know it's not. And there's nothing more beautiful and more real than nature, the true essence of nature. If you look at what something really is, okay, whether we're looking at the opening of a flower, or we're looking at a sunset, or we're looking at a sunrise, that's truth. It is what it is. the moon, stars in the sky. There's so many things that we can look at that just is. We don't have to dilute it. We don't have to pretend. We don't have to deceive ourselves to tell us that it's not what we know it is. So I feel that we live in a world of much of it is very much real, which is what nature shows us. Nature's all around us, but we pollute nature and we distract ourselves away from nature. We take ourselves away from nature by putting ourselves on our devices all the time. And that those are inanimate objects that take us into these other worlds. Now they want to take us into all these virtual worlds.
Mhm.
Like this world isn't enough. We got to go into a virtual world. This whole thing with metaverse is like, okay, so this reality isn't good
It's
enough.
eye roll of the century for me.
It's what?
An eye roll for me.
Oh, it's like really, this reality isn't, we can't make this reality better. Well, yeah, we have the power to make this reality what we want to make it without being invited into a virtual reality that's created by somebody else. I hope people are waking up to that. This whole
Yeah.
metaverse thing I find really creepy.
Why is it that when in a higher state of consciousness, one is more open to having a mystical experience?
Because you really, again, it's like, think about the whole openness and the receptivity that I talked about earlier. First of all, what we know is that we can achieve different states of consciousness. And we can tell by the frequency of where we go in our mind's eye, going back to the third eye. Do you know that when we go into those deep states, whether it's in the waking state or the sleeping state, we can go into some incredible places in our sleep states, which is a continuum of evolving consciousness, So I think that I think it's a beautiful aspiration, if you will, to take ourselves into higher realms of consciousness. And this goes back to the natural high versus the artificial high, And when we allow ourselves to be this open vessel, if you will, we're able to receive so much more and therefore can experience the mystical realms. We can go into those other realms, those other worldly realms, those other spiritual realms that are just beyond this three-dimensional realm, if you will.
Less do, more be.
Exactly right.
You describe contemplation as distinct from meditation. What's the difference?
Well, I think what I say in the book is contemplation, the contemplative practices. If we sit and we're not in meditation, we're really open to receive. Both of them are similar in that we are allowing ourselves to be open, to be at one with whatever that higher entity of realization is for us. Again, I talk about, the absolute source, God, unity consciousness, Christ consciousness, whatever that is for you. But in contemplation, when you sit and you are just allowing yourself to receive whatever comes through you or to you, again, it's that downloading. Whereas in meditation, you're more inclined to quiet the mind. The goal really for a lot of people that meditate is to quiet the mind. So you're not really asking, even though, yes, in meditation, you can receive great insight in meditation. But I really draw the sort of the difference in the two, even though they're both contemplative practices and very valuable practices. I love contemplation. I don't think it's talked about as much. It is in mysticism, and a lot of the mystics were very contemplative. But meditation in our time seems to be talked about more. And I really wanted people to understand the beauty and the value of contemplation, as well as the meditative practices. And I think you are opening yourself up to receive, and you can listen and you can hear. You're not deliberately trying to quiet the mind. You're just allowing yourself to open your mind so that you can receive whatever valuable information you wish to receive.
That's really valuable and important. And I'll use that in the future. And you include so many incredible, valuable activities throughout your book where you help readers through various processes to identify their beliefs, developing their understanding, and guiding them in various sitting, contemplative, or meditative processes. It's truly awesome in breadth and remarkable guide that helps people gain empirical experience in their lives. I'm particularly drawn to their meditation that helps connect to a superpower, supernatural gift, I said, and meant to say, or gift they have. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, and I think for you, Travis, you probably really understand that because of your intuitive abilities that you have. And, if whether you're exploring mediumship or intuition or psychic abilities, or I mentioned several of them, and I'm sure there are many more than I mentioned, that people have the ability to access maybe their hidden gifts that they didn't know that they had. For some people, things like that come very natural to them. For those that went on to become psychics or become shamans or become mediums or remote viewers or channelers, I think there are many people that connected to their superpowers, if you will, because for some people it came to them very early on in their lives and they didn't know what it was. Maybe they experienced it in childhood. But if you think about it, a lot of the times it's not cultivated or nurtured properly. People can have these gifts and maybe in their family dynamics it's not being supported. I think we're all pretty psychically intuitive if we allow ourselves to develop and strengthen these innate gifts that we have. There's no telling what we can do. I always used to say this, and I've been saying it for quite some time. I think there's going to be days, which we probably can in many ways. I mean, where we'll be able to read each other's minds. We're going to be so psychic in our abilities to really intuit. And we do that in our own way. I mean, how often can you think of somebody and then the phone rings and it's them? Or you think of somebody and you run into them. And, I like when I think of that, it's like there's something that pulls us in that direction, but we don't really develop and strengthen that ability. And I think that if we really allowed ourselves to go into those places, which again is very transformational thinking, we're entering into higher realms of consciousness, there's no telling what we can do.
Exactly. That's so beautifully put and a great example for people that might be interested in exploring their own gifts and powers, so to speak.
Right.
Also, the darkness meditation was fascinating to me to read about, is very good. And for some people, I'll just say there's a lot of people in denial about their darkness, perhaps engaging in toxic positivity, like those people that say good vibes only, or which can ignore negative perceptions or engage in spiritual bypassing. How can they access mindfulness if that's not their framework or perspective? They're just like, I don't have that in my life, and deny its existence.
Such good questions, Travis. That's a really important point because there's so much spiritual bypassing that goes on. And we're complex beings, where we don't want to deny aspects of ourselves that truly exist. I'm a big fan of Carl Jung's work, and as a Jungian myself, with having explored Jungian analysis and I'm certified in Jungian studies, I really think it's important for people to understand that we all have complexities to our personalities, and we have something called the shadow, which Jung wrote about extensively, meaning the darker aspects of ourselves, not in a negative way. And this shouldn't be thought of as negative. That's why a lot of people deny the darker aspects of their psyche because like, oh, I don't want to look at that, or oh, I have thoughts or feelings or ideas that I want to pretend I don't have. It's okay to go in there and explore the darker aspects, or maybe aspects of ourselves that we don't like and even hate. And if you don't integrate those parts of yourself, you're bound to project them onto others, which is a lot of what I talk about as well in the areas of evil. Do you know that manifestation?
It'll come out to play eventually at some point.
Exactly right. So it's very important to acknowledge the parts of ourselves that we might not be so fond of, and not in a judgmental way. Do you know? The shadow is there for us to learn about ourselves. The shadow is there for us to integrate. The shadow is there for us to shine a light on it, to understand maybe why do we have these darker thoughts that could come from parts of ourselves that haven't been healed properly, do you know, or the wounds again and the traumas. And it's like keeping something stuffed in a dark room and never going in there and going, you know what, let me open up these chests, these boxes.
Let it breathe.
Let it breathe. There you go. Let it breathe. Do you know? And what's this big boogeyman that people are so afraid of? You know, there are a lot of people that don't want to, like, oh, I don't want to look at that. It's like, look at it. Don't be so afraid of it. Let it reveal itself to you and show you what's there. You might go, well, that wasn't so horrible after all. And I, even in my first book, Says Who, which is a method that I created for transforming negative and fear-based thoughts, I say, allow for your thoughts to come up, not just the pretty ones. You know, look at your thoughts, become familiar with your thoughts, even the ones that might not be so pretty, and go, let me look at these thoughts that are maybe very critical, or maybe they're prejudiced, or maybe they're full of hate and judgment. You know, where's that coming from? Maybe you've inherited those thoughts from somebody who influenced your thinking, and that's not even really who you are.
Absolutely. I lost my train of thought, so I'll just move on to what else I wanted to share with you in the last moments before we close out. What are the sacred truths?
Well, the sacred truths are there. They await us to know. The sacred truths to me are the truths of what we're doing here. Why did we incarnate into this body? Why did our
bigger picture items?
Yes, yes. Why are we here? What is it that we've come to know? Well, I believe we can come to know whatever we're capable of knowing. Do you know? It's like this, the cosmos is the limit. You know, it's, I want to say the sky's the limit, the cosmos is the limit. It's like we can come to know whatever we want to know. Wow, that's pretty, you know, I talk about mind blowing. We can have our mind blown as many times as we want, do you know? But you have to be somebody who really wants to know. And that's what's most interesting to me, is that there are those of us that really want to know more. We want to go further and deeper and into the depths of not only our being, which is the inner journey, but the outer journey of wanting to come to understand. To me, it's like the gold. It's like wanting to find the gold, the gold nuggets of the cosmic sacred truths of the universe. And it's there. It's an ongoing journey of understanding and knowing and learning and evolving. So it's not like all at once, you know, it's gradual. And the more we open, and again, going back to the more we open, the more we receive, the more we avail ourselves to come to know the sacred truths of the universe, it will present itself to us if we show up for it and we avail ourselves, willing and wanting to know more. Like I say, it's there for us to know. And so you and I could, you know, as we're in a conversation right now, but we could, at any time, we could talk, and you might say to me, you know, Ora, I had this insight, you know, or I got this download, and let me share it with you. And I might go, wow, Travis, that's amazing. That's really cool. Do you know? And then I might say something to you, and you can say the same back to me, because those are your findings. Those are your insights on your life journey. You might find these amazing gems along the way on the lifting of the veils, going closer to the sacred truths of the universe, and then we're able to share it with one another. And that's what's, to me, so exciting about this life journey. It's like, lead the way. Your findings of divine
Love it.
thought illumination, you share it with me and I'm going to go, whoa, that's awesome. Do you know? And that's what's, to me, the most exquisite about this life journey. Like, don't waste it. Don't waste it on the small stuff when you can have the sacred stuff.
Beautiful. Anything else that you want to add as we get closer to the close of the show? Just want to point out how beautiful. I noticed immediately the owl on the front cover of this book. Very meaningful spirit animal for me.
Yes. Yeah, me too. Me too, Travis. It's a very important animal for me as well. Nice that we share that in common. Well, you asked me wonderful questions. I think we covered a lot. And for anyone that wants to know more, go on the journey and get the book.
Yeah, and also check out the Institute for Transformational Thinking, because you have many programs there, free meditations there as well. And it's just so awesome to see you and everything that you do. And I'm just so honored. So thank you. Thank you very much for being with me today. And
Thank you.
thank you all for joining
Having me.
wherever and whenever you're doing so. It's no accident that you're here. It's by divine intervention, actually.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much, and
Thank you.
take care.
Thank you.